So I'll start off the meeting with a quick land acknowledgement, and I'll introduce our speaker, and then we'll maximize presentation time. Just to begin, McMaster University, which is the host institution for the Canadian Research Data Center Network, is situated on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. We'll begin our session today by giving honor and thanks to the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations, and to recognize our responsibility to respect and honor the intimate relationship Indigenous people have to this land. Visit Native Land Digital, a space where people can learn more about the lands they inhabit and the history of those lands, and how to actively be part of a better future going forward together. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce and thank in advance Dr. Howard Ramos, the chair of the Canadian Statistics Advisory Council and professor at the Department of Sociology Western, for joining us today. We're just chatting before the session. This is the last time he can join us in his capacity as chair because he's got 3 days left on his term. And without further ado, I'll just turn it over to Howard right now. If you could make sure that your mics are muted during the presentation, just so we don't have any phone calls, kids, cats, whatever, interrupting the speaker. Thank you very much.
Miigwech, merci, thank you. It's great to have an invitation to present to the CRDCN, and thank you everybody for making time to join today. It's great to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen from Dell and other parts of the various places I've been. And it's also great to see that Benoit Dosti is on the call as well, who is a member of the council. I'm going to try and make sure that I can share the screen and then also hopefully see my notes at the same time. So I believe that hopefully you can see the screen and the PowerPoint.
We can, yep.
Okay, great. So with the time that I have with everybody today, what I would like to do is kind of do 4 things. The first thing I'd like to do is to introduce the CSAC for anybody who is unfamiliar with the council. So the CSAC is the Canadian Statistics Advisory Council. For those of you who already know the council, I'll give you a little refresher. The second thing that I want to do, which will be the bulk of what I talk about, is sharing the key recommendation from the council's 2025 annual report. And here I emphasize the key recommendation. It's the first time that the council has only made one recommendation. So you might ask yourself, well, what am I going to talk so long about? Well, I'm going to talk about the recommendation and the 6 sections of the report that led us to the recommendation. The third thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is some of the stuff that's ongoing and emergent, stuff that the council is watching for its 2026 annual report. And then the last thing is hopefully have some time to hear from you about your insights on the national statistical system and answer any questions you might have about the presentation. So the CSAC. Some of you already know us. For those who don't, we're a group that was created through amendments to the Stats Act in 2017. And we're tasked with strengthening the independence and relevance of the statistical system. The key task of our mandate is to provide advice to the Minister of Industry, as well as advice to the Chief Statistician on the overall health of the national statistical system. We think of that system quite broadly. So we see it as including issues concerning the relevance, the accuracy, the accessibility, the timeliness of data, as well as privacy and confidentiality. We also see it as including statistics from the federal government, Statistics Canada, provinces and territories, and various sectors and jurisdictions. Something that I always stress that's important to remind folks is that the council is not an oversight group. That function's taken up by the Department Audit Committee. Instead, the council offers advice. As you probably know from your own experience, people offer you all sorts of advice. Sometimes you take it, sometimes you don't. So our job is really to offer the best advice we can in identifying opportunities and challenges and how to navigate what we're identifying. The CSAC's mandate also includes the release of an annual public report on the state of the national statistical system, and the Council has so far released 6 reports since it was created, and they're available in English and French on the Council's website. In terms of the composition of the Council, we can have up to 10 members. Currently, we have 5 members, the chair and the chief statistician as an ex officio member. And the current members are listed on the slide. They include Catherine Baudry, Benoit Dosti, Anka Kessler, Vinamra Mathur, and Stephen Tapp. And if you're interested in their profiles, you can visit the CSAC website. All this said, I think the best way to explain what the CSAC does is to go through our annual report. So as I was saying, our annual report makes one key recommendation, which is to develop a framework to define and accredit official statistics. The report, which is entitled Towards a Stronger National Statistical System, was released in the fall. And for lack of a better way of describing this fall, it was a fall that could be characterized as turbulent times, where we're experiencing profound economic and technological change. And if that wasn't enough, we're also facing shifting geopolitics. What the Council focused on was it's also a time with rampant misinformation and disinformation. And it's a time with increasing challenges to the authority of national statistical organizations. Despite all of these trends, StatsCan remains a trusted and valued institution and is a key provider of information for Canadians coast to coast to coast. This year's report focuses on solidifying the national statistical framework in order to better coordinate information across jurisdictions and to leverage the opportunities that come with new technology. The Council believes that having a trusted reference point in official statistics is essential to combating misinformation and disinformation. It's also essential for maintaining the country's sovereignty. So to this end, the Council examined what other countries are doing and looked at the best practices for assuring quality data. We looked at Australia, France, Ireland, New Zealand, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. And in our work, the Council observed that in the Canadian system, there's no legally recognized definition of official statistics, nor any clear and definitive authority over who produces them and who oversees their quality and standards. The Council felt that this leads to ambiguity and it creates space for misinformation and disinformation. And it's for these reasons that this year the Council made its one recommendation, which is to develop a framework to define and accredit official statistics. As I was mentioning, we make that recommendation through 6 sections. The first section goes into detail on the framework and why we feel there's a need for this framework. So the Council observed that there's no reference to official statistics in the Stats Act. And although Statistics Canada does refer to official statistics on its website, it doesn't define the term. This is in contrast to most countries who collaborate closely with Canada and who reference official statistics in their legislation. Accreditation of official statistics also requires identification of clear legislative authority and strong partnerships for their collection, production, assessment, coordination, sharing, and access. We believe that strengthening the authority and trust of the national statistics system is key to ensuring quality statistics in Canada. The Council concluded that current ambiguities in authorities creates uneven standards and methods across federal departments, as well as across jurisdictions, not to mention outside of government. We believe that a national framework for official statistics with standard measures and clear authorities can provide an anchor for the wider statistical system. Although credibility and coordinated information on the nation's population and assets are the basis of the Stats Act and are defined in the Constitution, the governance infrastructure needed to support this mandate and the mandate of an increasingly digital society is currently lacking. This reflects a national statistical system that is multi-jurisdictional, with statistics produced by Statistics Canada, but also different federal agencies, the central bank, provinces and territorial offices as well. And this is not to mention statistics that are produced by other sectors such as Indigenous organizations, academia, the private sector, and non-governmental organizations. The current statistical ecosystem has become increasingly complex with the abundance of information from these different data producers. For this reason, the Council believes that Canada should formalize a framework for developing and accrediting official statistics to fully leverage the country's wealth of data and to facilitate the potential of a federated data structure. We believe that this would support the 2023-2026 data strategy for the federal public service, which focuses on specific data gaps that require new data environments and collaborations. While much source data exists, the problem often lies with conflicting definitions, incompatible data hubs, and duplication of data. These all increase the cost of producing quality statistics. We believe that a recognized framework for official statistics would facilitate collaboration of data producers from different jurisdictions as well as different sectors, and could potentially harmonize concepts and methods. This could balance the need to address technical and legislative barriers for data sharing, while at the same time respecting jurisdictional autonomy. Failing to coordinate data with common statistical standards and methods, we believe, represents lost opportunities for addressing Canada's most pressing problems, which are increasingly polycrises, or what other people might call wicked problems, that require intersecting data in real time in a granular form from a multitude of different sources. The Council came to the conclusion that the federal government should examine options for incorporating a definition of official statistics in its legislation and in federal governance structures. In the second section of our report, based on these observations, we felt that it's important to try and provide a definition of official statistics. In fact, the Council was struck that there is no reference to official statistics in Canada's Statistics Act. Also, an interesting kind of tidbit, if you're curious to read the Stats Act, is it only has one mention of data in the Stats Act. The term official statistics is sporadically used on StatsCan's website, but again, it's not clearly defined. While StatsCan is a major source of what would be deemed official statistics, other jurisdictions and non-governmental sectors also produce quality information that contribute to understanding national and regional trends, and which also could be considered official statistics. Canada is one of the few countries among its peers that not only does not have official statistics in its legislation, but also does not define them. Examples of countries that define official statistics in both places and have a clear definition are Australia, France, Ireland, New Zealand, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. In looking at this issue, the Council realizes that Statistics Canada endorses and adheres to the UN Fundamental Principles of Official Statistics, and we believe that this could be a framework where these principles could be the basis of a definition for official statistics. We also believe that they could be the basis for the broader framework. In the third section of our report, we look at authorities. So in addition to having a trusted definition and to having a framework for official statistics, we recognize there needs to be some authority for producing them, and it needs to be clear who that is. Current authorities and responsibilities are ambiguous. So for example, the Stats Act does not indicate how the agency should work with other federal, provincial, and other sector partners in sharing and integrating statistics. The Stats Act does not specify protocols for data access and use of coordinated information across jurisdictions, nor does it specify processes to accredit official statistics. Canada is essentially a cooperative federation which currently relies on goodwill and trust on the part of all stakeholders. If that was to erode, there aren't very many mechanisms to rebuild it. Too often there's a lack of coordination and debates over jurisdictional authorities in the current system. These gaps have been the focus of much of the Council's previous reports, so I won't go into a lot of detail on them here. We believe that the interpretation of Statistics Canada's legal authority under the Stats Act should be clear, and its authorities cannot be diminished as new legislation is introduced. As you likely are aware, there's been legislation introduced to revise the Privacy Act. There's a new ministry, on a digital ministry, and we see the potential for this to lead to some ambiguity or increase the ambiguity. We also see that with the new position of the Chief Data Officer of Canada, that there is some ambiguity between their role and the role of the Chief Statistician, as well as ambiguity between the Privacy Commissioner and that of the Chief Statistician. With respect to the Privacy Commissioner, where the two relate in the federal government's organizational hierarchy, and when there's dispute, which takes precedent over the other. The Council strongly believes that privacy cannot trump necessity and proportionality or the collection of information to produce statistics. As I've already said, we believe strongly that StatsCan's role cannot be ambiguous. We recognize that with its internationally recognized expertise in statistical methods and data standards, the agency has already played a leadership role in developing and implementing the federal data strategy, including the technical data infrastructure required. The agency has in-depth knowledge of social, economic, and environmental issues and advises on data development in support of community and policy decisions. It also has a strong track record for creating data linkage environments where various data sources can be effectively and securely collected and integrated. And this has led us to basically conclude that the agency is the de facto steward of official statistics. In the fourth section of the report, we explore issues a little bit further. With a clear framework and definition of official statistics and clear responsibilities and leadership, the Council also recognized the importance of accreditation in a federated data ecosystem. This is an essential tool to ensure that data in statistical repositories such as the Open Data Portal meet professional standards. Labels of accreditation of official statistics would help Canadians discern the credibility of data they find through an increasingly complex and wide range of sources from public and private sectors, including online and social media. The Council believes that the federal government should mandate StatsCan to develop a process for accrediting official statistics within the agency to then potentially be extended to the broader federal family. This is something that's already done by the comparator countries that I have mentioned previously: Australia, France, Ireland, New Zealand, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. When they do this, their codes are based on values of trust, quality, professional methods, and ease of access. The Council believes that StatsCan's quality assurance framework that's currently used for the agency's own statistics could be a way forward on this front. In the fifth section of the report, the Council believes that, like many of its international peers, Canada should have a repository for official statistics. They should be easy to find and accessible. While much federal data are available on the Canadian Open Data Portal, the portal does not distinguish between what would be deemed official and other statistics, nor does it include information produced by other jurisdictions. We recognize that there is potential to create a space that is a repository where there's a clear distinction of official statistics from other products. Too often the metadata are lacking or vague on the portal, leaving users unclear about how the data were developed or their suitability for decision making. In some discussions, the Council even talked about potentially creating quality labels for statistics so that people have an understanding of what can responsibly be done with different products. If a framework of official statistics is established, we do believe that the Open Data Portal could be an easy access point that's already established and could be leveraged. Another possibility would be to build an independent repository that contains only official statistics. The last section of the report focuses on promoting trust in the national statistical system. In pretty much every report that the Council has made, this is an issue that comes up. And we believe that it's important for the federal government to communicate with Canadians on why recognition and trust in official statistics are important. Official statistics, we believe, are key to promoting national sovereignty, especially in a time where the country's sovereignty is being questioned. They define, measure, and articulate Canada as a nation and must reflect conscientious and moral principles of a democratic society. They provide Canadians with an unbiased shared narrative and a common set of facts on economic, social, and environmental issues, as well as the state of the country's diverse population and its different regions. Statistics are important to understanding issues that affect the daily lives of Canadians and the quality of life. Reliable government statistics, however, increasingly compete with information produced by a wide range of stakeholders. Often there's competition with information that has little or no scientific basis, especially when presented as alternative facts. According to a recent StatsCan study, 43% of Canadians thought it was becoming harder to distinguish between true and false news and true and false information. And 73% reported having seen content online that they suspected to be false or inaccurate. Foreign states are also using disinformation to undermine Canadian democracy and economic well-being, and often false statistics are used in this enterprise. Take, for example, Donald Trump, who has used disinformation as a pressure tactic to misrepresent the terms of trade between Canada and the United States. Or just take as another example this week, the example of J.D. Vance citing statistics from a small consulting group out of Atlantic Canada to undermine immigration and diversity in Canada. We could also look to Russia or China that uses artificial intelligence and other disinformation tools to do the same. This is all to say that the Council believes it's important to promote trust and generate a national narrative through statistics. So overall, to achieve our key recommendation of developing a framework to define and accredit official statistics, the Council has made an additional 8 specific recommendations to the Minister of Industry and the Chief Statistician, which I'm not going to go through right now, but you can read in detail through the annual report, which is on the website. What I will do with the remainder of the time that I have is talk a little bit about some of the ongoing issues that the Council is working on, or yes, issues that the council is working on. The council had an in-person meeting in the fall, and in that meeting thought about how can it extend the work from the last report but take it further. And a natural extension that the council felt was worth looking at is the future of national statistics organizations. And we felt that this is something to begin exploring for at least two reasons. The first reason is the politicization of statistics, and the second is the impact that new technology will have on the production of statistics and the place of NSOs in governments. So, as you may be aware, a number of NSOs have faced political pressure over the last decade. One just has to look at the US Census Bureau as an example south of the border, or ending the labor force statistics in the US as they were producing statistics that the president didn't like. One could also point to the case of the UK, where the roles of the NSO have been split apart. We could also look at the Greek case, where the chief statistician of Greece was imprisoned and tried for producing statistics that the then prime minister didn't like. Such interference has led to calls in the international statistical community to protect national statistics, as well as national statistical organizations. We also see the politicization of statistics as a result of data producers and debates over the implications of social and other measurements with alternative facts. So we can see this happening, for example, with questioning of inflation statistics, or producing different metrics of national accounts. These lead to potentially conspiracy and misinformation. The other space that the council's been looking at in terms of the future of NSOs is the role that new technology is having. Cloud computing would be front and center in this kind of discussion. Cloud computing intersects with the politicization of statistics as we look at, for example, the interpretation of US firms, which are the biggest firms, AWS or Microsoft, of providing cloud services that are subject to American laws. And under the current regime, the belief is that any data, even if held overseas by an American company, is subject to American intervention. Cloud computing also potentially facilitates new possibilities in federated data structures that we haven't seen before. We also, in terms of technology, are keeping an eye on artificial intelligence, as there are amazing possibilities with artificial intelligence to speed up reporting and production of basic reports, as well as the role that AI is playing, large language models are playing in how people access information from Statistics Canada. When I presented the report about a week or two ago, StatsCan was mentioning that there's now been an increase in the use or the pulling of different tables, but a decrease in the use of its website, largely because large language models are going around the website and pulling the stats directly, and people are then receiving the information through ChatGPT or other LLMs. Basically, what the council is recognizing is technological change will mean that data will be gathered and housed differently and will produce unprecedented ways of engaging data. Along these lines, the council is also interested in unpacking the different mechanisms that affect those two themes, including going back to credibility and trust, looking at the role of stakeholder engagement, looking at education, looking at communication, looking at relationships, looking at data access. Yet another issue that the council has been keeping a close eye on is Budget 2025. As news reports have indicated, there will be cuts to the civil service, and this is bound to affect Statistics Canada's general operations. It does seem that the cuts are going to be spread over multiple years, which means that the cut or cuts will be hard but not severe, and probably can be handled through largely attrition. And I'm open to being corrected on that, but it seems that it'll be difficult, but not fatal. Of bigger concern, the budget recommends decreasing the frequency of surveys. It's not detailed or specifically laid out in the budget what work will be affected in StatsCan, and the council has asked to be briefed as some clarity emerges on this. And we should be briefed in the February meeting that the council will have in person. The council is also watching a few pieces of legislation that are noted in the freestanding annexes of the budget that are project-based, that are potential opportunities to pursue new funds. So the budget cuts on the one hand, but also invests significantly in new projects in the other hand. The council has also been following Munir Sheikh, the former chief statistician's statement on the budget. And when I presented this report in Ottawa, had the opportunity to talk with him. He was at the presentation, and he has raised some concern around what budget cuts will mean for Statistics Canada and the future of statistics in the country. The council has also been wrestling with appointments. As Grant mentioned, my term as chair will end in 3 days. At that time, until the minister and government appoint a new chair, the council will need to work without one. There is a precedent for this happening once before. It was a matter of weeks, and then I was appointed. We have raised this a number of times to the minister's office, but we are basically held to the government and council process, and really are dependent on whether or not we are seen as a priority by the minister to act. In addition to losing the chair, the council will also potentially lose another member, and the complement of the council would be potentially reduced to 4 members after February. Although this is alarming, I did send a letter to the minister this week. We also have talked about having a convener in place to keep the council moving, and have amended the terms of reference to allow that to work. And I am hopeful that the council will get its appointments. This being said, I think I've talked quite a bit. What I hope we can do with the time that remains is I'd like to hear from you. If you have any questions or you have any ideas on what the CSAC should be considering in our future work, it would be great to have a bit of a conversation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Because we're in a meeting format, that means that sort of anybody can talk, but I'd like us to use the raise hands feature. As we get the discussion started, I see a few things in the chat. First of all, from Umit, in addition to quality official statistics, the use them in the policy program development, the use of them, I guess, in the policy program development and monitoring of actual results is equally, if not more, critical. Can the council say something, anything to this effect to support public good?
The council definitely can say something about this to support public good, and I think that the council often does talk about, well, we often recognize that you can't have statistics without people. So unless people provide their information, there is no statistics. But we also recognize that unless statistics are used by people, and that there's access to statistics and reporting back of the information that's been given, that it erodes the trust and the value proposition of giving your information to government. So very much, as the government is going through various cuts, and here I would articulate my personal view rather than the council's view. One of the first places, unfortunately, to get cut is in that policy and reporting space, and this has cascading effects for StatsCan because the cost recovery gets cut as part of this, and potentially it leads to an erosion of what's produced, which then in turn creates a vicious cycle where there's less policy because there's less statistics. So definitely, I think that this is something that the council is aware of and can speak to. And the good thing is that Benoit Dosti is on the call who can pick up the reins. And this is something that I will add in my notes from today too.
Thank you for that. Well, in the absence of any hands, maybe I'll pick up on a point that was made by Timothy, who had to go. Sort of what is the council's vision of how the government should engage with First Nations and First Peoples to sort of bring them into the tent of official statistics and make them part of the national statistics system?
So one of the things that I didn't say, but one of the things that I believe the council feels strongly about is that StatsCan should not be doing, in a national statistics system, StatsCan should not be doing it alone. And we recognize that the strength of the Canadian system is a federated system, which means that working with First Nations partners and the First Nations Governance Institute is important. And here, I think that the council in its previous reports have made recommendations on this front. Every report where we make any recommendation with First Nations, we send out to an advisory group of First Nations. And we would basically, as I was saying, feel that there should be data sovereignty. And new technology allows new ways of pulling information. We no longer have to take all information and put it into a federal server. With cloud computing and with federated data structures, you can now leave the data in First Nations so long as there's a protocol and an agreement through shared data standards, create the aggregate statistics to report back. So I think that the council is aware of it. I think in the last report or so, we haven't been as vocal, in part because we got a little bit timid because we lost Indigenous representation on the council. And so we felt we didn't want to overstep without having full representation, following the principle of nothing about us without us. And we felt that the focus that we had in the last couple of years was at a higher level in terms of fundamental principles rather than specific issues. But these are things that the council is concerned about. And in one of the notes that I left for replacement members of the council, it was to have greater First Nations involvement and try to recruit a member who represents one of the Indigenous stakeholders.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I can ask you questions all day, but if there's is there anything from the audience, any reflections, or I mean, this is your chance to ask Howard while he's here.
So Grant, let me just follow up on that. Same question, except instead of thinking about the First Nations, it's Mike Phil, incidentally, Howard, hi. Instead of First Nations, think about provinces.
Same answer, which is again, part of the thinking around developing a framework for official statistics is very much to think about how provinces can have a shared data standard and opt in to creating truly national statistics rather than having StatsCan uh, having the duplication of production of data. So already in a number of fronts on education or in justice, there are partnerships. In previous report, the council had made a recommendation that all new federal programs should have a data requirement and evaluation, same as the gender-based assessment that's made. A data needs assessment should be made with all new programs. The council also previously was pleasantly happy with the health transfers agreement that had requirement to have data that's common data that's collected. And so on this front, the part of the reason of focusing so much on official statistics is to recognize, and here I might be, I wouldn't say for the council, but I would say for myself, that conceivably, if there are official statistics and there is somebody who, and the agency accredits official statistics, it could accredit statistics produced by provinces and territories as official without collecting them and without pulling them into the federal kettle, so to speak. And so this is kind of where I think that the first step is really to have the common standards and definitions and protocols. And then when the situations are there and there's comfort to opt in for both First Nations and provinces and territories, it allows that potential. And so this is kind of where the council has been talking and part of what's been behind some of the thinking on official statistics.
Okay, so there's a question from Pierre Tourigny. When you talk about statistics, do you distinguish between the statistics and analysis of those statistics? And I'm going to add on to this question. What is the role of the official statistics and transparency of how they're created? Like how big should this be to ensure trust?
Well, at this point, the council has largely looked at it almost like an onion or a set of concentric circles, which is first StatsCan to really clarify across its over 8,000 different products, what are you getting? So in the last 5-6 years, the agency has been more comfortable with using experimental methods. So non-random sampling, for example, for the last 20 years has been using administrative data in new ways. Sometimes there's a high confidence level with what's being produced. In other times, it's a lower confidence level. The agency has tended to be, in my opinion, overly cautious at releasing some of the information that comes from this and some of the data sets that come from this. And we see that having a distinction of official statistics and even more, exploring, creating a kind of a grading system can really help allow the agency to say, here, use with caution, rather than what's been done in the past of, we did it, but it's locked in the vault. You can't touch it, and so that's sort of the logic of where we think. And so it's really on the focus of the statistics, not on the analysis. It's the actual data and core measurements. Oh, I see Michael's hand is up.
Yeah, Michael Wolfson, come on. Yeah, there he is.
Hello, everybody. Howard and I have discussed this already, but I wanted to pick up on the point about federated data. I think there's far too much optimism about how that can work. It's okay if you want to produce a crosstab with sums or averages. You could do that province by province or group by group and aggregate. There's no problem. There's even a methodology, one of which I wrote a paper on, where you can do things up to generalized linear models, regressions. But as soon as you get into more complicated kinds of things that involve, for example, the propensity score matching that the Canadian Observational Drug Evaluation Group has been using for 15 years now, it breaks down. If you want to follow people longitudinally which is really important in the health area, and they leave one province and go to another, you're going to have right-censored data, so you're going to lose people to follow up. So I worry that there's too much emphasis being placed on this, basically saying to provinces, okay, we'll let you get away with holding all the data tightly in your province and not sharing it, which, by the way, is the case with the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging and the CanPath, both of which have cost the federal government over $100 million, and you still can't analyze them in a pan-Canadian fashion. So just maybe a more squawk or something and a caution that and I'll ramble on one more sentence. I've been accused in the past of StatCan imperialism, but it seems to me StatCan is the obvious locus where if you really need to access pooled data, you can do it by having the data located there. And the provinces, COVID was one of the more egregious examples where they simply didn't share, even though, according to various agreements with the Public Health Agency, they were obligated to do so.
Yeah, I don't have really an adequate, follow up to that. I mean, I might have some reaction, which is, I think that we've been exploring this line of thought as a possible way to get out of the logjam, so to speak. For years, the problem has been the problem uh, with the existing system. We sort of have been thinking about shared data standards and as you know, Michael, for people who don't know, Michael was one of the original members of the council. Uh, we had discussions of data spine and have looked at different analogies and have been playing around without an adequate solution. And so I think that the council kind of got struck with this as a new line of thinking. Um, and the idea again was to try and work out on what can it do on simple form and then branch out rather than kind of the existing situation where there's a lack of coordination and a lot of ambiguity. So, this is where I feel lucky. I can say, okay, Benoit, who's on the call, this is your homework for February, and if you guys don't know each other, should definitely put the two of you in touch.
Go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, thank you very much, Howard. I'm Natalie Harrow. I'm Executive Director of CRDCN, and this is a really useful talk. So obviously you're speaking to a lot of researchers, or at least that's the community that we support. So the analytical side or what we can do, I guess, is really key. Um, what can that community do to support these findings and recommendations? I mean, I don't expect you to have easy answers, but um, we get involved in lots of national discussions around fair data outputs and the way that you can create standards and all the rest. But yeah, I'm just curious to know if you have any thoughts on that.
Oh, for sure. I think that first and foremost, know that the CSAC exists. If I was the chair longer than 3 days from now, I would say know that you can reach out to the chair of the CSAC whenever issues pop up. And I think that one of the biggest roles that the CSAC has is that we have the year of the chief statistician and the ACSs, and we can help facilitate greasing the wheels, so to speak, and we can bring voices into the room that often are not in the room. So I guess the first thing I would say is know that the CSAC is a resource that you can reach out to when you're encountering issues. And we don't know what we don't know, so when in doubt, raise the issues. The other thing I think that the research community can do is you kind of recognize what StatsCan does and what its mandate is. So I would say that one of the biggest things that I learned in my time in the CSAC is busting the myths of what the agency does. So, if you look at the Stats Act, it's tasked with a census of the people, census of agriculture, labor force statistics, and Michael can correct me if I'm missing anything else. But as a researcher, I often would have come before and said, but they don't collect enough statistics on what I'm working on. They don't collect enough statistics that's longitudinal, enough statistics that's micro, and it's true. But it's also recognizing that a lot of the social and statistics that are produced as cost recovery to other parts of the federal government. So, what I would say to the research community is get to know the federal government and get to know the agency and what its mandate is, because it only has, especially in an environment of austerity, so much it can do. And believe me, almost every time I've presented, I've heard some constituency want specialized data on the thing that's very important to them, and not just academics. It comes from the private sector as well. And in fact, in talking to Munir Sheikh, when he was chief statistician now 15 years ago, there were products that he was wanting to get rid of, but he couldn't get rid of because there was a political interest in it from a small group of users. So get to know what the agency's mandate is. I guess a third thing, which is once you do know this, as a research community, work together and have critical mass and focus. And the CRDCN can really facilitate that. And through events like this can also help create the gateways and be abreast of what's going on. So I think that the research community can be a very strong advocates at promoting data access, of raising the issues that the agency needs to be aware of in terms of future trends, and also pushing the agency, know that the academic community pushes in its ways to think differently, and so
Yeah, what's interesting is I think I'll just say one more thing. I don't want to hog the time here, but there's a flip side to what you're saying too. So by pushing for a definition of official statistics that is inclusive of beyond certain things, but puts a boundary around that, that also helps define what's outside of the official statistics, because these conversations around need for more clear national coordination around research data governance are happening in the research sector as well, right? So you need to know what's within your boundaries. And because Statistics Canada is the huge player in this space, having a sense of what, in fact, they're not responsible for, I think is also helpful from that perspective. This is really interesting. Thank you.
Well, and if this reminds me of one more thing that I would add, which is one of the biggest puzzles I find in the Canadian data ecosystem is if we look to our neighbors south of the border, a lot of their major surveys are housed by universities or research institutes. But then when you look at how are they funded, they're funded directly from donors or from multi-million-dollar lines. In Europe, it's largely research institutes that are doing it. In Canada, we don't have the equivalent. For most people in the social sciences and humanities, we have $2.5 million with a short partnership grant, which is not sufficient for a longitudinal study. So I think that this is another space where I would encourage researchers as a community that we advocate for being able to show a critical mass on targeted issues that it can be collected. I'm always struck by ISED is the one who funds the Tri-Council, and ISED is the one who funds StatsCan, and it's taking money from ISED to ISED. And so there is this opportunity to articulate, okay, hang on a second, we can do this differently. And there is a role for the academic sector to, on the spaces that are outside of the core mandate of the agency, to fill in. and to potentially work with IRCC, ESDC, you name the different federal and for that matter provincial jurisdiction to create some of this. Now, the other barrier I would say on that front is, as for the academics who are on the call, I don't think most of us did our degrees to become a manager. And so I hear time and time again from colleagues, yes, I'd like to, get an equivalent of this or that survey that exists in Europe or the US. And I say to them, go get a partnership grant and then go after the Canada Excellence Research funding and scale up. And they say, yeah, but I want to write the papers and do the analysis. I don't want to manage this thing. And so that's another thing that we need to also figure out is for those of us who are mid to senior career, if we have the carrying capacity, I think there are some opportunities to do something like this.
Okay, so I see Michael Wolfson has put a recent op-ed he wrote in the chat, which, self-promotion is always welcome here, and it is an excellent read. So if you haven't yet read that op-ed, you probably should. It's a few weeks old now, but just as relevant as it ever was. Did you have another question, Michael? I see your hand again.
I was just going to pipe up that I'm more grumpy or far more ambitious than Howard is. I think the research community should play a much stronger role, and I think it should be lobbying the government, building on this capstone blue ribbon committee that started 3 years ago. You can read all about it and or at least get a taste of it in the op-ed. I can't find the Torstar one, and it's behind a paywall anyway. And there's a longer paper that's about to be published. I've been ticked off, I guess, not to be too impolitic about it. About sometimes the research community, I think, is just far too timid about pushing for what kind of data it needs. I think it needs to be able to have a stronger voice in pushing Statistics Canada. One of the concerns that was expressed to me over time is, well, we don't want to give our data to StatCan because we'll never get it out again. And that needs to be fixed, and that requires changes on StatCan's part. And again, it comes back to addressing this question of federated versus pooled or centrally accessible data that, StatCan has the legislative mandate to be the safe house for all kinds of excellent research. I don't want to put Mike Veal on the spot, but you have and CRDCN is sort of the vanguard of being able to open these data up for much broader use. It should be expanded. But anyway, thank you.
We've only got a couple minutes left. Okay, well, maybe I'll just do it. You sort of in the middle of your presentation reference sort of data sovereignty, and people are familiar with the Cloud Act from the US, but I noticed that there's only sort of one recommendation from the council, and I'm wondering what the discussion was around sort of not panicking a little bit more about the implications of things like the Cloud Act and China's national intelligence law and sort of the international sort of pressure on infrastructure and data sovereignty and all that stuff, because to my mind that's hyper important. But I just was wondering if you could kind of, I know you talked about it, so what was the sort of tenor of the discussion?
Well, so what I would say is that that's an emerging conversation that really began in the October meeting, and I don't think that the council is fully up to speed on it. So I think some of the members are and have been articulating it, but even as of this morning, to air dirty laundry, there was a little bit of exchange back and forth between some of us and the agency over the politicization of statistics, and that's the space that this will fall into. And I think that so that it's kind of basically it's a space that the council is just starting to look at, and I would say that there's some hesitation of getting into politics for those who work in government. This is a fine line that you don't want to necessarily cross. And so I think that that's kind of why the council didn't have any recommendations this year on it. Um, I think that in the past, with different members, we had a bit more capacity to engage the issues. I think with the current members, there's folks who probably are paying attention, but again, it's the kind of context, the way the council works every year is we try to have a kind of a set the agenda in the fall, dig into the agenda in the winter, focus on the report in the spring. And so as I kind of share that kind of stuff, it's the in between the fall and the winter. So again, it's good to have Benoit, who was on the call. I think he's off the call now. But this is great. I can now respond to my email exchange and say, see, there is interest. We should be doing this.
Okay. All right. Well, that puts us at 2 o'clock. So I want to thank Howard for his presentation today, but I also want everyone to give him a big round of applause and a send off and lots of appreciation for his years of service as the head of the CSAC, the chair. So thank you very much, Howard, and we're all very appreciative of your service.
Well, thank you, everybody, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. And I will extend that. I know who's on the council and I know the main players. So if you need to get access to the CSAC, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is simply my name at uwo.ca.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll end for today.
All right. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.